Hello, hello. I'm just going to keep everybody muted until we get everybody in. I'm Vix. Hey, Shelly. I'm excited. I love when I see people I know, and I love when I see faces I don't know. So I'm really excited to meet everybody. And yeah, we're just going to give it one more minute. Get your coffee, get your fur baby, put your human child somewhere. I have one of those, so I don't really know how we manage that. I know all my friends are complaining about their kids pulling their headphones out in Zoom. So I have to thank God for small favors, that I only have a French bulldog and not a human child. Although you will hear her snoring because it's still her bedtime. I promise I cannot talk and snore at the same time. It's not me, it's the dog. All right, cool. So we've got everybody in. Oh, we have some more people coming in. While we're just letting people come in, would you put in the chat the primary reason that you joined us and the primary platform that you use when it comes to your digital community building efforts? It just helps me level set and get a sense of what would best serve you. I've worked with every community for the last 13 years. So I can talk about anything. I can talk about very specific things. And I want to also get into content, and that really is platform specific. So if you could just pop that in the chat for me, you'll help me kind of keep us on task, because I know you are all very busy people, and I would love to spend all day with you, but I'm sure you have many things to do. If you haven't figured it out yet, jokes are my shtick. So I'm really in need of a laugh track on Zoom, really used to like having people give me some feedback. But it is what it is right now. So we're making it work. Hey, Ryan. All right. So cool. We got one more coming in. I just want to get everybody in before we start the rules of the road, as I like to say. Awesome. Awesome. And the other thing that I want to say before we really get into anything, there are no stupid questions. I'm really passionate about helping individuals, marketers, professionals. Everyone is a marketer today, and I'll explain why I believe that. But I'm really passionate about making it a safe space for information, for content, for ideas, for just questions. Like, I didn't learn all this overnight, and I definitely am I still learn things every day. So I want you to feel really comfortable asking me questions. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have. And if you want to turn on your video, I still can't see a few people, but you don't have to turn on your video. I know it's early. So that's totally up to you guys. You can keep it on or off. It's up to you. All right, so let's start with a little bit about Cuddle Space, the lovely people who are having me here today. It's a co-working space in New York that partners with restaurants and other hospitality-focused spaces, which I think most of you probably know, to provide great spots to work out of. It was a really cool situation, and obviously, because of what's happening, they launched a digital platform to help members connect professionally and socially, and allowing us to trade services and access a job board and a Slack channel, and a huge list of discounts on products, which I actually have used. So the platform is free to use, and they're going to be sending a follow-up email with some of my resources, some of their resources. And if you're not already in the Slack channel, I would love to see you in there as we continue this conversation. All right. Let me give you a quick little rundown of me, my background, and like why I'm here. So I have been managing global, national, and local digital brands for the last 12 years, and I've been consulting with small businesses for the last 15. I have worked at ABC, NBC, Telepictures. I worked at Live with Michael. I taught Meredith Vieira herself how to do digital marketing, like social media, Twitter, etc. Stalk our kids, because that's what everybody always wants to know. And there is actually a YouTube video where Michael Gelman is going like this, and I am the person he's going like this too, because I used to do a lot of Google Lives or Google Hangouts on Air, which are now just YouTube Lives, when I was a digital producer at Live with Kelly and Michael. I have a journalism degree. I literally have a print journalism degree. And for 5 years out of college, I had 6 jobs working at all different types of organizations to build community, convert community, and create content that would convert. And then 5 years ago, I started my company, which is called Six Borough Social and Studios. And we are a full service creative digital agency and content production house. What makes my company so unique is that I am the full service creative digital agency and content production house. And I have a network of contractors that I have worked with at all of my jobs in all of my past lives that I will engage if the project calls for it. So like I'll do a video shoot and I need to bring people in, but I could also shoot and edit video myself. So I think that the reason that I want to share that is because when it comes to content, it's not something that I do, it's something that I am, right? Like I think about everything from what does that look like? What is that picture? Why are we telling that story? And when it comes to community in a digital setting, you have to tell the story in a much more aggressive way. And you have to really focus on that two-way conversation, right? So I think we all know this, but activating it is a lot different than understanding it. One thing that I find when I'll go in to do an audit is that a lot of the conversation on a social channel is this way. It's broadcast. And because that's how the platforms were designed, right? They were designed to be supplements to broadcast television, to the experience that we all knew when it came to watching things and engaging with things. But now, a reason that I say everyone is a marketer is because I don't believe that there is B2C or B2B. Yes, of course, there are certain services and certain products, but every consumer, and I think we're seeing this a lot with the PPP fallout and the Small Business Association, every consumer has the ability to be a small business owner. And small business doesn't look like what it looked like 50 years ago. It looks a lot different. I'm a small business owner. I make jobs, I do all these things, but I don't make jobs the way Shake Shack does, right? So I think that if you think about the community you want to build, you have to start by thinking about what exactly you want them to do and what you want to be able to provide them. Because if you are able to understand what you want to do and the bigger your community is, then you can understand the true value of what you can provide them. Hey, Dan, we're just getting into it. I will back up. The one thing that I want you to pop into the chat is which platform and why you joined this call this morning. And I'm almost about done with my shtick, and I'm going to unmute everybody so we can start to have more of a dialogue. But I think that the big thing I want you to go into this conversation with is, how can I leverage the community that I have built? And I don't mean leverage in a bad way. I mean it in how can I use our collective influence to give my community a better experience, to give my community comfort and security and consistency. Business continuity is no longer isolated to opened or closed brick and mortar stores or opened and closed pipelines. It is much more about visibility and understanding that even if I can't physically be with you, as a business, as a community, as a thought leader, I can still provide you with value. So I'm going to unmute everyone.
Tell them how much you appreciate his wonderful storytelling. Yeah. Do you want to start with that one, and you want to say like a nice thank you, saying, Mr. Sweeney, what was your favorite story? Maybe telling him.
Okay, I'm going to unmute everybody. If you want to keep yourself muted, you can. But everyone else is unmuted, and you should be able to unmute yourselves. And I'm going to start going through the questions here. I've seen some Google Hangouts, Facebook groups, Facebook campaigns, LinkedIn, Slack is another big channel that people are using these days, right? Yeah, Slack is like one of my favorite digital communities because, so one thing about digital communities is if no one is there, you can't talk to anybody. So it could be really cool to have a Facebook group, but Facebook groups are not necessarily the thing that everybody's doing. And it also depends on your demographic. So one thing that I think people have to remember, I had someone in one of my Slack groups say, I really want to grow a community for 20, 30, 40 somethings. I'm like, you should be on Slack because that's where they are all day for businesses, for side hustles, and for like friend communities. If you just look at how Zoom took over, right? Google Hangouts is a perfectly good tool, but Zoom took over because everybody was talking about it. Like my parents didn't know about Zoom, and my parents are both professionals in their 50s. So like they could have known about Zoom. And I think that that's just the thing to consider here is that anyone, now my grandmother knows about Zoom and she's 85. So everyone is using Zoom. I mean, obviously she uses Zoom in a very interesting way, but Zoom has a community aspect to it. And I think that two-way conversation, showing people that you are willing to see them face to face, is really good. The one thing I don't like about community on Zoom, you have to wait for other people to talk, because it's not a normal two-way conversation. So how do we combat that? All right, I'm opening it up to questions because I need a sip of coffee. Don't all talk at once.
All right, I'll ask you a question.
Go ahead, Max, go.
Okay. What are your like kind of key tactics that you take post a webinar like this to engage those who showed up today? Like, I'm just curious what your sort of, next steps post this you take essentially.
Yeah, so I am, so I've used every single email service provider, ESP. Also, if I use an acronym that you don't understand, please stop me, because I tend to talk really fast, and it's my language, right? So an email service provider is just something as simple as MailChimp, or it could be something as complex as Infusionsoft, Entreport, like a true CRM, client relationship management tool, or customer relationship management tool. So I am Infusionsoft certified. I'm a Keep partner, and I actually do a lot of webinars with them if you want to learn a little bit more about that. And one of the things that I did with them was go through my follow-up workflow. So I say that automation allows you to be the person that you want to be. Like I use a lot of Zapier connections, and people are like, oh my God, you're always you follow up all the time. Like you're always so present, always so active. And I'm like, yeah, that's because I have automations for everything. So one thing that I do after a webinar, like I'm actually hosting a cocktails and conversations webinar tonight. And before we jumped on here, I finished my sequence. Sometimes I'm also a procrastinator. So it starts with a morning reminder, right? Like for this, obviously it would be night before. It depends on your time. So whenever you're hosting a webinar, you want to have a reminder 3 to 5 hours before, and you want to give like a quick rundown of who's going to be there, what they're going to talk about, a little bit more in depth or like teasery. Think about it like that 30-second spot that you see on Hulu, right? Where it's like, this is amazing. You're going to want to be here, right? A commercial almost. Then I do something about 3 hours before if it's a nighttime event, because people get distracted. And I'm actually hosting my thing at 6:30 tonight, 3:30 Pacific. So I want to make sure that people actually show up because that's like afternoon. Then I follow up post-event with both a survey and an action item. So for example, with mine, I'm going to offer everyone who talks or everyone who joins the opportunity to follow up with an ask and offer. I also always push that there will be a recording and that you'll have an opportunity to follow up via email with questions. Like even if you have 100 people and you take a week to respond, that's a good problem. I think what holds people back from doing true follow-up when it comes to a webinar is that they're afraid they're going to be overwhelmed by the response. But that's where creative tagging comes into place. So you could set up different subsets, people who join, people who didn't join but got the recording, and then people who took no action. And then you would follow up with them separately.
Cool, thank you.
You're welcome, you're welcome. Who's next?
I'll go next. So, I mean, you pointed out a problem right before we hopped into Q&A with digital platforms where it's hard to have a fluid conversation. Do you have any like tips or tricks to combat that in terms of protocols you can set before a meeting begins or anything along those lines?
Yes. So SOAPs, standard operating procedures, or guides are a really great way to do that. One that I often share with people is how to zoom into any room, because I'm kitschy and it works for me. Obviously, you can call it whatever you want, but it's things like make sure that you are well lit, make sure that you don't have too much background activity. Like if you do have a lot of noise, try to mute yourself and submit questions via comments. I also find that if we can do like a rules of the road, this is more informal, right? This is more like if we were sitting around a table, we would just be talking. I wouldn't have to do that. But normally I set up like a intro slide when I bring everybody in from the waiting room, and it goes through like things to consider. So one thing that I find really detracts from engagement is that people are trying to take so many notes, because this has a real feel of a presentation. It has a real feel of like school, right? Like when you were in school, there was one person presenting, there was a speaker. You go to conferences, there's a speaker, like you want to take notes. So what I always say is, you're gonna get the recording. There's also like no need to be screenshotting, no need to be on your phone. It's all about this here now. Like if we were having a meeting, you wouldn't be on your phone, because that's not like proper etiquette, right? So I also will say to people, make sure that you mute your notifications, like turn off your iMessage or whatever. I think there's a lot of distractions. So usually I kind of say it in like a, there will be an opportunity if you actually listen and answer certain questions for you to get something more. Incentivization and gamification is the best way to combat that. But sending like a one-sheeter where it's like, here's our rules of the road, or here's our etiquette, you know, or even just doing a simple video in the email sequence that you follow up with, which you can set up in Zoom too, if you just use registration through Zoom, or Eventbrite actually has some really killer follow-ups for, it's a low lift tool. So it has a lot of really good follow-ups for webinars now. They did a nice pivot. So that's one way. Make sure that you like level set expectations. Another way, and this is a little aggressive, but like call on people. I know it sounds ridiculous and I do it, but it's more about, look, we're here. We took the time. Like, let's have this conversation. And the silence is a little awkward, but I think if you can overcome that as a host, then you have more of a chance to follow up. Also, I always ask for people's social handles. Usually I keep the conversation on Instagram, but for something like this, I would probably ask for a Twitter handle, and then we can have like a follow-up conversation after. Because that's how you move it. Like, think of it like, you know how we would like, when we were like at the beach and you funnel sand from one like sand castle thing to the other, you really want to look at your social as that. It's a funnel, like it goes down and then it also goes back up. So it's like, okay, we started the webinar. How do we get people out? But how do we get them back to other webinars? So I guess more like a slinky than sand, but.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
What is a low lift tool? What does that mean?
Yeah, awesome. Shelly, thank you for that question. So when I say that, I mean that it is a tool that can be activated, used fairly quickly. So Slack is a good example of that. Zoom is a good example of that. Eventbrite, basically they have the foundation that you need to do what you want to do. So whether it is a video, like imagine building a video tool right now. No, like I don't want to do that. Or even like hooking up. Years ago, I used to link on the engineer's computer, like the video from Skype and this and that and the other. Like, I don't have time for that. So I want to be able to click a link, go live on my camera, and then we're done. So that's what I mean by a low lift tool, that it doesn't really require you to think through the steps if you're new to the process.
Hey, Vix.
I have a question. Oh,
Hi.
No, go ahead, Rachel.
I was just going to say, I actually have a question about Slack. I'm not super familiar with it. So how would you promote a Slack channel if you're trying to build a community around it?
Yeah, so are you going to do a free Slack channel or a paid Slack channel?
Yeah, I'm starting from scratch. So I just want to get started. And I was actually going to ask you the question, what's better, a Facebook group or Slack? So now that it's a Slack route, I just have no idea how to get people on it.
Yeah, so right, if you had asked me that question a year ago, I would have said Facebook. It also depends on who's your demographic. Like how old are the people that you want to connect with?
Yeah, it would definitely be like 20s, 30s, 40s, like you said.
It's a Slack. So the reason that it is because they already have the app. So one way to fit, it doesn't matter what the platform is, Facebook, Slack, etc. But if you have daily check-ins, so like Cuddle Space does a really good job of this, right? They have different events. They have daily kind of stand-up meetings. So even if you say, like I have a Slack mastermind and we do every second Friday of the month, we do a free call, like a free Zoom like this. And we have office hours. So to build your community, you could say like, okay, we're going to do a happy hour and you should join us in Slack. The one way to get people into the Slack is to make them sign up for an email list, because then you can, like, okay, digital communities, I want to back up a second. No matter what you are trying to do, everybody needs an email list. Every single person needs an email list that can be segmented and activated, because like Vine, like Slack is popping now, right? But in a year, Slack could go down just like Vine did. Vine was a multi-million-dollar influencer platform. These kids used to get paid $100 grand for a 6-second clip. Like TikTok is the same way. I know because I manage some of them, and it was insane money. It was like, I mean, money that we can't even imagine now, right? Coca-Cola, Pepsi, they were like, money, like it was all over the place. Slack could become that, but then Slack could go away. Every company has the potential to blow up virally, but you don't control it. The only thing you control is an email list, because even if your ESP, email service provider, goes down, you can export a list of contacts via CSV, which is just like an Excel sheet, and then you own those contacts. They have opted in and approved content from you directly, Rachel, or your business. You know what I mean? So that really allows you to have more control in an environment where there is a very limited amount of control. Social is, there's no control. So when you get them on an email list and incentivize them to join your Slack, be it by free information, high like level of community engagement, or the ability to promote themselves, and this is for any community. So there's asks and offers, there's job boards, there's, you know, people need resources. Like people are motivated by resources. So whether it's time, money, or fulfillment, because that's how I define a resource, you can offer that in your Slack channel. And you have to say that it is the exclusive place for whatever you're doing. Like if you want this mug, you're not going to get it unless you come into our Slack. Some other things that you could do, like Tower Press has some really great, Tower Press is a female owned sticker and like accessories company, and they have some really great like little gifting incentives to help with that. So how many of you read the Daily Carney? It's a marketing newsletter from a agency out of, I want to say Pennsylvania. Carnage, the Daily Carnage is the newsletter, and I'll send some follow-ups in the Kettle Space email to this. But the company is called Carney, and they do a roundup of content. They also have a massive Facebook group. That's what they chose to start with. I mean, but they have like 7,000 members. My issue with Facebook groups, to be honest, is that Facebook is not the primary platform for the audience that I typically want to engage for my business or myself. Facebook is usually a secondary platform, and it's not necessarily something where I find as much engagement as we used to, because people are just overwhelmed by the groups. So I think Slack kind of sets you apart. There is some tech involved, like, but your audience should really have some understanding of how to use Slack, even if they're not experts. And you could always do a video to teach them how to sign up and log in and all that. And the tool I use to record is Loom, L-O-O-M. I'm gonna make sure we send all these in the email from Kettle Space. Jason, I see your hand up. Let me unmute you. Ah, there you go.
So, hi, I was actually, my girlfriend and I, she's right over here. I'm a Kettle Space user. She's been, starting to work with me as well, and great product, by the way, on the Kettle Space side. So love that. So one of the things that I've been trying to help her with is she's a in-home physical therapist. Her clients are usually typically older, like 50 plus, right? So yeah, so
there's nothing wrong with people who are 50 plus. I have a lot of friends who are 50 plus.
But part of the thing was around transitioning, trying to build a community around Facebook. But going back to your question around the email list, in terms of what's the best way to ask people or how to engage them to get that information to build that list, especially people that are older and maybe don't realize that emails are now yesterday's landline phone.
I think people in their 50s, use email. Like 60s, my grandmother had tweets, so Nanny is a rare breed. One thing that I often say when you want to incentivize on an email list, so PT, right? You're an in-home PT. I think the thing to consider here is there's a lot of people who are in pain right now. Like I haven't been to my chiropractor. My Theragun isn't cutting it. So how can you show me easy, like use what you have at home to relieve your lower back pain, right? Because we're all sitting at computers, tech neck. Like this is, how do I use a can of tomatoes to fix my back? I know you can come up with something creative like that.
No, I'm doing that. Jason started me a Facebook group when I all of a sudden didn't have anyone. And I have a couple of clients that were able to switch over to Zoom.
Yeah.
So now it's about building that, because I've got like 200 people on Facebook, mostly friends that were Facebook friends with me, and then a few they shared. But I, one, don't know how to expand that. Two, don't know how to ask for the emails to try and do MailChimp. And then I am thinking of actually doing webinars or, paid webinars or courses in the future. But this is also brand new. And I don't know how to reach people beyond my little world.
So giving that, first of all, you got to run Facebook ads to reach new people because everybody is paying to play. There's no way to not pay to play. You don't have to have a Bloomingdale's budget to pay to play, but you do have to have some sort of budget. I've gotten people new leads with like $500 or less. And we're talking like 400 emails for that spend within a 30-day period. And what you give away is something that they want. So that's why I was referencing those videos, because if you have already created this content, in order to get it, they have to go on your email list. Like email is a form of payment. When I talk about conversion, I'm not always talking about money. Social conversion is a currency too. So that's one thing. If you can give them something that they would not be able to find anywhere else, and then also incentivize them inviting new people into your community, that's another great way to do it too.
Oh, excellent. So to clarify though, and again, I'm so brand new. I just would prefer to treat people, and I've been in business since 2001, all basically word of mouth and my Christmas card. Right? But I need to pay. I need to create some sort of ad and start to.
Well, you need to pay in some fashion. Yes. Knowledge is payment to your audience. Content is payment to your audience. Like if you want to reach a very large audience, much more like global than your local area, then yes, I would run ads, but I wouldn't do that until all your foundations are in place. Because so like you get these people, you pay to get these emails, you have no follow-up for them, that's a loss. So you really want to think about exactly what you're going to do with them once you have them.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And the other thing too, like I struggle with this. I never ask people for reviews. Like I have all these testimonials and people will text me and I'm like, ugh, I'm going to ask them for another review on Facebook and then Google, and like how many times? So that's a tool. Somebody wants to create a tool but like they won't let you because the platforms want the traffic, which is a whole other conspiracy that we can get into another morning. I mean, that's another thing to consider, right? Like they want you to pay because they are publicly traded and they have to answer to stockholders. Like it's not a bad thing. It's just, this is the way it works. So if you know the game, you can play the game. You need to know the rules. And I think that's, something to consider. These social platforms are not altruistic. They're not like nonprofit. They're here to make money and to monetize your currency, which is your habits. So you can use that in a less sinister way. You can feel a little less big data. But I think that, the most important thing right now is you want to help people. So how can you help more of them? That's the point. Like, I know I always say it feels squishy for people, like it feels like for people who are healers. I work with a lot of functional medicine doctors and a lot of like people who just want to do good. And I did a campaign for the United Nations and it was all about funding global education, right? We wanted to do good and we did good, but we only did that because of the community we built. Joseph, you had a question.
Yeah, I was just going to build on your automation comment earlier, since I'm a fan of it as well. What, other than Zapier, what other tools would you recommend to the audience here today?
Oh, so many. So I actually have, which I will include Mac in the email follow-up. I'm a big Airtable fan. So full disclosure, like I went to Catholic school, everything was color coded. I have all crazy kinds of stickies on my computer. Like I am a huge nerd. So I like everything organized and in its place. And when it comes to tracking my marketing initiatives, because it's promotion, right? Like if you want visibility as a person who needs to make money, you are in the business of marketing yourself. I wrote a book called 6 Weeks to Freedom about how I built my business in 6 weeks as a 6-figure business. And what I talk about there is it is about understanding what your currency is, what your assets are, and a lot of it is in your brain for creative people or entrepreneurial people. So understanding that in order to get what you want, you have to treat your career like an entrepreneur, where it's like, okay, what's the next opportunity? How do I grow? How do I connect, engage, and then convert? I think is really important. So one of the things that I talk about is this thing called the State of the Union. Now I call it the State of the Vix. Also, I should have said, like, my real name is not Vix, it's Victoria, but I have the Fix. So that's why people call me Vix. And it's also like a cool, kitschy brand. So when I do the State of my Union, right, I focus on 3 groups of people. And one reason why I use automation tools is because it allows me to keep those people segmented and to keep the offers that I give them segmented. So that's where Airtable comes in. Airtable is basically Google Sheets on steroids. It allows you to use Kanban, which is a project management methodology, to have, like, I don't know if anybody's used Trello. Give me a hands up if anybody's ever used Trello. So like the Post-it notes, right? Airtable has that built in. There's also a gallery. So let's say you have like 10 different project docs. There's a gallery where you can put screenshots and see what the documents are, from PDFs to other sheets to all these things. You can also upload. One of the things about Zapier that I love and hate is that I forget when I connect. So like I'll have like 15 docs and I'm like, oh wait, where does that go? What happens? Where'd it go? So I will make sure that I connect it to this sheet and I say, this is the name of the Zap, and this is where it goes, and this is the tag trigger, and blah, blah, blah. So my Airtable, I built this out and I published it to the Airtable universe, so you guys can actually download that and use it. But in addition, I use an ESP. So I use Keep by Infusionsoft. I use Airtable. I use Squarespace. I can do HTML, and I've done Drupal-based sites, which make me want to pull all of my hair out. But there's no need for that anymore. I used to say 3 or 4 years ago, I used to be like, WordPress, like you have to be on WordPress if you want the full capability. Squarespace, like, totally stepped up. I don't really like how their blogs are. I'm not a huge fan of like how uncustomizable some of it is. But for someone who's just trying to get a community off the ground, Squarespace is awesome. They have a built-in email service provider, like through their system. They have a scheduler. So I always use Acuity. Again, there are hundreds of scheduling tools, but my favorite thing about Acuity is I can take payments, but I can also say to people, instead of when should we connect? When should we meet? How's this? Does Tuesday at 3 work for you? I'm always like, here, you can schedule time with me for a coffee talk, is how I say it, because I don't have time for the back and forth. So automate your scheduling, automate your follow-up. I also use Google email. So like my email is Gmail based. And if you go in the browser, so like if you're gmail.com instead of like mail or another mail client, you can pre-schedule your emails. So Gmail is like one of my secret automation tools, because I'll schedule follow-ups. Sometimes I like to get up at like 4 and write. I'm a morning person, so not a night person. So I will get up early, send people emails, but like nobody needs to know that I am active and engaged at 4 o'clock in the morning. Just like they don't need to know that I am like in a Facebook hole at midnight in my bed. Like, again, I really use automation to like keep that veil up. I always say I am the most private public person you'll ever meet. Another tool for social, so like specifically to schedule social posts, I use Sprout Social, which is a little pricey, but what I like about it is the analytics are really great, and you can pull in Google Analytics as well as data from all your social platforms. My favorite Instagram scheduler is later.com. Again, it is a paid tool. So I think a lot of people are like, I can just do this for free. Yeah, you could do it for free, but you don't know anything about what you're doing, right? Like nothing really is free. You could do it for free and then spend 45 hours doing all this manual follow-up with analytics. It's not worth it. So I just think that that's like one of the best tools. The reason I like Later, they have a really good built-in link in bio. So that's the other thing about Instagram specifically. Link in bio is still one of the most popular hashtags. And we could have a whole hashtag conversation separately. But that's why people do it in addition to it being a good call to action. But with Later, when you click on the link in bio, you see all of the Instagram posts and then people just click on that post. I used to love Linktree, and Linktree has good analytics, but people are like, where's the link? I can't find the link. Like that kind of stuff drives me crazy. Like, I told you where to find the link, go find the link. But I'm always like, oh, it's right here. You know, you have to be community service oriented, even though you're like, it's here. What do you mean? You know, I want to get very Brooklyn on them. And sometimes I do. It depends on the day. We're in pandemic mode. So, you know, sometimes you gotta go full pandemic on them, as my friends call it, Covix. Because sometimes I just rant it out on Instagram, and it does well. Don't hide your feelings. Be authentic, whatever they are. So I think that answers all the automation tools that I use. Slack. Yeah, if this, then that. I know a lot of people love that IFTT. I don't like to give the machines that much power, because I have a client who was scheduling retweets from like a series of accounts. I said, okay, so what happens if that account gets hacked? What happens if that account all of a sudden changes what they're sharing and is no longer aligned with your mission, but you reshared it? And like, yeah, okay, views don't, you know, tweets don't count as views, but like, that's kind of off. You got to be really careful. That's the other thing to consider, whether it's Slack, Instagram, Facebook, whatever your community is, you are the gatekeeper for your audience. So you have to protect the integrity of your community at all costs. I do sponsored posts, like I get paid to post. I have an affiliate for certain things, but I don't do like every other sponsored post, because my audience trusts me to deliver something that like I like and that I've vetted. And when I email, like it's genuine. It's never like, hey, buy this now. Like I am not a late night marketer, never was. And again, you can't be really too obsessed. I know a lot of people are very obsessed with, well, I lost a follower for this and I lost a subscriber for that. You can't really be focused on that, because yes, numbers are important, but integrity is more important. Awesome. Anybody else have any other questions? Thank you.
If you lose folks and they're not your audience, I mean, that's not a real loss, right? Like you're kind of just honing in on who is best serving, who you're best serving with your message.
100%. Now, the one thing to consider about that with the community, because if you have aspirations of doing like branded content or being able to say like Rachel, like I have a Slack community of 10,000, right? If you have that leverage, are you in Ladies Get Paid, Rachel? Okay, so join that Slack community. I think you'll really like it. Mac, I'll send you a link for that. It is women. You know, it is for the ladies. But what's great about it is that once you have that, then you get to do partnerships, then you get to bring them discounts like Cuddle Space. Cuddle Space brings discounts because of the volume of the people that they support and share it with. So Shelly, on one hand, yes, you have to let people go, but on the other hand, it is really important to remember that numbers are important and quality numbers are important, but some people are just going to be there because you post cool stuff or because you go to cool things. And it's okay to have them not be 100% aligned with you. Maybe they only like the recipes you share or whatever. Not every member of your community has to be 100% all in on every piece of content you share.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Any other questions? We're at that 9:10 mark.
I would ask you one more if you have another minute. Like,
do.
how would you get over the, if I feel like I'm at like a hump of wanting to like pump out consistent, persistent quality content and I've yet to like get over that hump? Do you have any best practices, tips as to how you would like get into that groove of like a rhythm of just consistent, persistent quality content?
Yeah, the cadence. So I actually have a guide that I will share in this. It's free. It's called Cadence in COVID. And I actually go into, yeah, the headlines. I used to be a headline. I was a reporter.
Clearly.
They're my thing. And I like when it's alliteration. I love it. Yeah, you know, I mean, if you don't make yourself laugh, come on.
No, of course, I'm with it.
Gotta entertain yourself when we're in here. So in that, I talk about, I also have another one called the Big Three. So I have a lot of digital downloads that I'll share with the follow-up email. But basically, when I go into the Cadence in Crisis, I talk about what you need for each platform specifically. And the way to do it is to just keep yourself on track. That's where that Airtable comes in. So I try to spend, I mean, I can do it fast, right? I've been doing this for so long. But when you first start, you should spend 4-hour blocks once a week on all your content and focus on one platform at a time, because you really should be able to do 2 weeks of content per batch. So what I mean by that is, like, if you're going to write blogs, I don't know, Max, are you blogs? Are you video? What's your primary?
In like a combination of blog, podcasts, workshops, like via Zoom. And I started like attempting a book, but I'm trying to figure out the right pathway forward.
Yeah. So podcast, I mean, I don't know what your podcasts are about, but typically they recommend a cadence for a podcast, and you could be doing them via Zoom. So like I have a podcast with one of my friends here, and we started, I always used to do YouTube content. So now we're doing season 2 is full on video and audio. So we do, that's the anchor piece of content, one of those a week. And then from every anchor piece of content, which could either be a blog or a podcast, so like your big, the thing that takes you a long time to produce, that should yield 10 to 15 social posts across all platforms per anchor content.
Wow.
So you should be able, so like think about it, right? If you do a really good, even if your podcast is short, you should be able to have 10 to 15 posts just from that content, because you may be sick of it, but your audience will probably only see 2 of those posts.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's a lot to take from one maybe piece of anchor content that I wouldn't have. I think like I've thought more like just one-to-one, which clearly is not enough.
Yeah, because your audience is, so there's a little bit of this like fatigue, right? Like, for example, I don't always have time to promote stuff as much as I want to. You know, what I do and what I tell people to do, like I don't pay myself. So like I can only spend so much time on my content. But when I am hyperactive, when I am like, I increased my views to my like personal Google business page. Over the month of March, I was sharing like twice a week, and I increased my views by like 900%, 988%. And it was just 2 a week. Like my LinkedIn, I started posting from like January, and I went from 2,500 followers to almost 4,000 followers by March, because I'm not posting articles. I'm just posting like posts, and my LinkedIn is now more engaged. So, you know, if you, and a lot of times, like I will post the same thing, but people will see it in different ways. I say it in different ways. You should be able to get between 10 to 15 per anchor piece of content.
Cool. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right, everybody, it's that time. Any other final questions? We got 1 more minute. I'm in the Slack too, so.
I think too,
Can I
if
just
you're,
ask,
if you're,
can we just get your information too? You said you're going to send it out to everybody.
Yes, I am.
Okay. I just want to be sure that I get your information, your contact. I'd love to follow up offline.
Absolutely. I'm going to
Awesome, by the way.
Thank you. I'll message you my email so you have it. But then Kettle Space is actually going to send, I just messaged you on Slack, be able to copy it. But Kettle Space is also going to send a follow-up email with some tools and all the things we talked about, and you'll get the recording. And I'll make sure that like my little templates are in there, and that COVID guide is available just on my site. It's just vixraytano.com/COVID-19, like the way we spell the virus. And there's a video on there. I also did this interesting video at the beginning of March. It's on my IGTV, but it's also on my YouTube and on my website. My website is dominatedigitalmedia.com.
Hey, dominate.
And
I like it.
Thank you. On that website, I have a video on how to survive COVID, like before this all went down, because I talk a little bit about Google Trends in there, and I'll be back for more of these. So I think I'm going to do another one next few weeks on Wednesday mornings. So get those questions in, like check out some of my stuff, see how else I might be able to help you. And yeah, let's keep this conversation going. I really believe in community. Like I answer everyone, or mostly everyone. Let's put that little asterisk there. But female DMs are a very scary place on the internet. Just gotta be real. So yeah, I think I've had like 10 marriage proposals. I'm like, bye. I had one person who was like, I really like you. And I was like, I don't know anything about you. Like, I'm an internet person. Like, please no. Please no. Like, but again, you know, I have friends who have met through Instagram DMs. So, and they're like totally normal and it's a totally good thing. And like open to it, just not open to like a very aggressive conversation. So we can have a whole conversation about response grids if you want at some point. So all that is how we respond to uncomfortable comments. I've done that a lot. I did a lot of crisis communication. One final story. Meredith Vieira shared her a few years ago when her show launched in 2014. She did her Why I Stayed story for domestic violence. And the comments we got were on both sides, right? Women were proud of her, men were proud of her, people were shocked. And then we had a lot of like, this is an attention-seeking move, blah, blah, blah. Oh my God, so all that is important to consider. We can talk a little bit about crisis communications in another one of these. I think that's like something that we always kind of overlook because every brand has a crisis. It's just when it happens. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I hope this started your day off on a very positive note. And look out for that recording, and I will see you all next week.
Thank you. That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll see you in the Slack. Bye.